watched it. Le'Veon Bell he was saying all offseason about how he was ready to take over the Michigan State offense. He wanted to be that every down go-to back, and he was that. I mean, just highlight reel run after highlight reel run. I mean, he was just amazing, rushing for over 200 yards in that game. Completely hurdled the Boise State defender. If you didn't see that, I guarantee you'll find it on YouTube somewhere. Basically, now Boise State's not in the Big East yet. And this was if they win this game, they're pretty much, with the rest of who they have left on their schedule, they're pretty much a lock for a BCS buster. It didn't go that way. So Boise State out of the BCS picture, and Michigan State 1-0 on the season. And the only thing I think kind of sucks about opening up your season with the big game is obviously one of these teams is going to lose. Like Michigan knew going in playing Alabama, yes, they had the confidence to win. It may not have showed that on the field, but now they're already in a hole. I mean, they dropped down the AP rankings. Alabama jumps up to number 1. I mean, starting your game, that's why most schools set up their schedule to where their big game, their first game of the year is
an easy game.
Well, not necessarily an easy game, but a winnable game to where they can kind of see where they stand before conference play opens up. But one game that is a really big surprise, I didn't really believe this when I saw it on ESPN Bottom Line. Texas State beat U of H in their first D1 football game ever.
Yeah.
And that makes me, I'm going to touch a little bit on it more on the next segment, but that makes me a little bit nervous for this game this weekend where they play Texas Tech at home. First home game in their new stadium at Texas State. But Texas State beats U of H. U of H's offensive coordinator either resigned or got fired. That's kind of unclear.
Technical terms, he resigned. Technically, he resigned. But, of course, they want to make U of H probably wants to make it seem like he resigned just so they can cover themselves, but most likely he got fired. And really, this is I don't know how this happened or why this happened. I don't know if you go into a season and you think you're gonna do good and then you do bad your first game. Why would you pull the plug so early? Why would you pull the plug on?
And I mean, you saw it in when Baylor played Washington in the Alamo Bowl. Then again, Baylor did drop 60 points on Washington, so I could see why their defensive coordinator got fired at the end of the year. But first game of the year, yeah, it was Texas State. And yeah, they may not be a legitimate program, but I mean, they're building up some credibility. I mean, and I'm not saying Houston's a top-tier program by any means, but
they're coming up. Yeah,
they should have taken care of business, but I don't think it's worth firing your offensive coordinator and having to find a completely new guy.
Yeah, I mean, you go into spring.
Well, I say new guy, but it's probably, I haven't looked into this, but it's probably going to be a guy within the system,
exactly.
Just promoted.
Right. But still, I mean, you build your chemistry. You go into spring practice, and you go into spring knowing what you're going to do. You practice all this time with this guy. You build your chemistry with this offensive coordinator, and then what does it say when your football coach decides that after we stunk for one game that we're gonna go ahead and hire or fire this guy because he wasn't calling the right plays or we just weren't doing it on offense, and go into another guy and having to build this whole new chemistry with. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. But moving on, Clemson. Well, one thing I do want to touch on before I touch on Clemson, Oregon, and LSU, we kind of got to wrap it up. But if anybody paid attention to any college football this weekend, not just college football, there were actually 2 deaths at games this past week. A Texans fan died at the preseason game.
For being stupid?
Yeah, it was stupidity, but still he died.
Right.
And then a 20-year-old Tennessee fan. Tennessee played NC State in the Georgia Dome the night before Clemson played Auburn.
And they fell from the
he
fourth
fell from
level? fourth level?
I heard he fell like 30 feet and then fell on someone. But,
yeah, something like that.
But he was like celebrating a touchdown. So it just goes to show you like 1 minute, like it just goes to show you how like precious life is. 1 minute like you're having a good time, like celebrating, and then the next minute you're not there. So thoughts and prayers with those families. But Clemson taking care of Auburn in a really close game. Auburn 0-1 on the season. Clemson 1-0, obviously. Taj Boyd had a very good game. No Sammy Watkins in that game, but DeAndre Ellington, Clemson running back, put that team on his back and carried them. He had a great game rushing the ball. And then Nuke Hopkins, the Clemson wide receiver, stepped up in the absence of Sammy Watkins and took care of business there. I think he set a school record for receptions in that game. But a very close game. Clemson edges out Auburn, and my pick to win the ACC is Clemson. Or my pick in the title games, Clemson and Florida State. Or they in the, I don't pay attention. I don't even know if they're in the same division or not. But one of those teams is going to make it to the ACC championship. Oregon takes care of Arkansas State. Not like that was a hard task. Gus Malzahn, former offensive coordinator at Auburn, new coach at Arkansas State. Oregon dropped 50 on him in the first half with like 8 minutes left. Marcus Mariota, the starting quarterback, it was either going to be him or Bennett. They made the announcement the week leading up to the game, and this guy did not disappoint. I mean, he has characteristics that you just can't teach. He's poised in the pocket. He knows when to escape the pressure from the pocket. He knows when to tuck it and run. He sees the open receiver and delivers the ball. Flawless game. Oregon takes care of business there with their typical crazy uniforms. I really did like the chrome and yellow. Like that had to have been
Oregon has the best uniforms.
That had to have been a long process to tape it up, paint it chrome, tape up wait for it to dry, tape up what you painted chrome, then tape yellow, or spray paint yellow.
Yeah.
But
they were sick.
I mean,
those uniforms, they always come out with some sick uniforms.
And they have different uniforms every game. I want to see if they make it to a national championship, which I think they can do coming out of the Pac-12. It may be a tougher road.
Oh my
God. I mean, you saw what they did. I would say their uniforms against Auburn in the national championship 2 years ago were a little bit reserved.
Yeah.
Really, all they had were like the yellow socks and like shoes. But and then LSU taking care of business against North Texas. Hurricane Isaac did not have any sort of effect on that game. But,
okay. So we're going to take a commercial break real fast. We'll be right back on 4th and Inches talking about Week 2 in college football, what's coming up, and what to look forward to. We'll be right back on 4th and Inches.
It's amazing, I'm the reason everybody fired up this evening.
You're listening to 4th and Inches on Speaker Web Radio, presented by Bayou State Pawn and Jewelry, Bayou Bark, and RDM Audio. Now here are the hosts, Nick Lott and Armando Ramirez.
And we're back, 4th and Inches, final segment. We already played Hell Yeah, so no Hell Yeah this segment. We did that to kick off the show because I haven't played it in the last 2 shows. Different bit of music for y'all. But going into Week 2, we've touched on A&M and Florida. That's what the whole first segment about. I don't know why you would just now be tuning in, but if you're just now tuning in, that's what we spent the whole segment on. So wait till we finish, go back, listen to the first segment. Talked for like 10 minutes about A&M and Florida. But,
so we're not going to talk about it now.
Exactly.
You know Florida A&M's biggest game of the week. So we're going to go into some other games that you might want to see this week, some other games that might be intriguing to us.
Before I do this, I just want to say I watched Baylor and SMU, and for the longest time during the offseason, I've said, and I mean you can go back and listen to other episodes that we've done, I said, I don't know how Nick Florence will take the reins of this offense at Baylor. And, I mean, he had such big shoes to fill with Robert Griffin III leaving. I mean, Robert Griffin III, I'm not going to say he was their only reason for success, but he was a huge contributing factor to it. I mean, they just completely, all phases of the game. Granted, SMU is not very sharp, but they dropped 59 points on SMU. Their defense stepped up, only gave 24 up. That was a big improvement from their last game that they played, the Alamo Bowl, where it was like a shootout.
Yeah.
But big ups to Nick Florence in that performance against SMU, because I didn't know. I thought they would win. You're going to get more of a feel for it when they actually play somebody with a good defense like an OU or a Texas. You're going to see how he responds. But as far as the first, and he's had some starting experience, but as far as his first game, I'm sure not necessarily comparisons to Robert Griffin, because there is one and only guy like that can completely turn a team around like he did last year. But I'm sure that, I guess we'll call them comparisons to Robert Griffin were bothering him.
Right.
And he set all those aside and played a hell of a game on Saturday. But going into week 2,
we got Purdue versus Notre Dame, Texas Tech versus Texas State, Georgia versus Mizzou. I'll dive into Purdue, Notre Dame. Notre Dame, of course, coming off their really, really good game against Navy
in
Ireland, Dublin, Ireland.
What was it, like 50-10?
Yeah, it was something like that. And a lot of people actually picked Navy to win that game. But Notre Dame came out. They showed with the new quarterback that they could do what they needed to do. They showed that they can throw the ball. They showed that they can win the game. So, with that being said, I think Notre Dame should have no problem beating Purdue. I think it's the Battle of the Shillelagh. I don't know. I'm pretty sure. It's some rivalry game that they have. And
both schools in Indiana.
Yeah, exactly. So, of course, it's a rivalry game. They're going to wake up for it. It's going to be a good game. You might want to check it out.
You're going to get it on NBC because, as you know,
Notre
Dame signed
what am I talking
huge
about?
TV deal with NBC for like 15 years. NBC does all their games, so check it out
on NBC. Oh, and by the way, did you see that the Big 12 signed a $2 billion
with
deal?
ESPN? Yeah, I heard that was going to be announced today.
With ABC, ESPN, and Fox. So it's a $2 billion. Now we're going to get off track here just a little bit, but it's big news. Yeah, exactly. But it's big news. The Big 12 signed a multi-billion-dollar deal, $2 billion deal with ABC, ESPN, and Fox, and I believe it's through the 2024-2025 season. I believe it's like 13 years or something. And the biggest part of the deal is that if one of the teams leave the Big 12, the Big 12 still has their media rights, and they still have the revenue coming in from that team that leaves. So that is a big part of the Big 12 becoming stable and being a stable conference. So it's a big, big step for the Big 12.
And one thing I did want to touch on this segment, I touched a little bit on it last, but I kind of wanted to get into more detail. Texas Tech taking on Texas State. Texas State coming off the win against Houston, playing their first game at home of the season.
Big win.
And I was really surprised by Tech. Seth Daggy really didn't play much because he didn't have to, because they were playing, I can't even remember who they were playing, like Northwestern State. They're a Louisiana school, and the funny thing about that, you remember Adam Jones?
Yeah.
He plays there. He plays there. No, really? Adam Jones, like Seven Lakes.
Oh, yeah.
He plays there. And then this kid I went to elementary school with in Lafayette, he's like third-string quarterback there.
Really?
Yeah, so I have some ties that go to that school.
Nice.
But, yeah, Tech takes care of business, like 44-6. I was really surprised out of like what I heard, because last year their defense was so bad. I mean, Cody Davis really stepped up during the offseason. He put in the time and effort to become a better football player. There was so much criticism surrounding him about how he wasn't an elite defensive back in the Big 12. We're going to have to see once he gets into some tougher competition. But I definitely think he has stepped up during this offseason. Seth Daggy's a great quarterback. And Aaron Stevens, I'm just going to go out and say it. Coming off the ACL injury, you didn't see him a lot last year, tearing his ACL against A&M. Coming back strong as ever. Follow a lot of the guys that play for Tech on Twitter. And talked to Tremaine Swindle here and there. If you didn't catch our interview with him a few weeks ago, be sure to check that out. But talking to him, he said, yeah, I definitely think Eric Stevens, coming off this injury, he's talked to Tremaine, and he said he's confident. You saw it in the game that they played this past weekend. I think he's one of the best running backs in the Big 12, if